with you today. I also want to say just a very, very special thank you to my friend and partner in a great deal of important work, and that is to Deb Holland. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Fantastic. Fantastic. So I'm glad you're all here today. I thought what we do is I tell you a little bit about myself, if for those of you who don't know me, a little bit about why I'm in this race. Then we'll try to take as many questions as we can. And then we will do that most important part of democracy, the selfie. I say as long as people want to do them. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I feel like this is a family moment. I brought my husband, Bruce, with me. He's the guy with his hand up over there. Oh, honey, there's a chair here called family, if you want to come and sit down. He's like, I'm not walking in front of all those people. Okay. So anyway, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Oklahoma. Dead silence. No, it's okay. It's okay. There aren't that many Okies. But I was born and raised in Oklahoma. I have 3 much older brothers. I am what used to be called a late in life baby. Yes, my mother instead always just called me the surprise. My 3 older brothers are all retired now. They're all back in Oklahoma. And to this day, they are referred to as the boys. That is to distinguish them from the surprise. When we were growing up, our daddy had a lot of different jobs. He sold paint. He sold housewares. He sold fencing. He sold carpets. And he ended up as a janitor. My mom was a stay-at-home mom until my daddy had a heart attack, and then she took a full-time minimum wage job at Sears, answering phones. All 3 of my brothers went off and joined the military. That was their chance to serve. It was also their path to America's middle class. Now me, I have known what I wanted to be since I was in 2nd grade. You may laugh, you didn't decide until 6th grade, 4th grade. Oh, we got some more 2nd graders here, yes. I wanted to be a public school teacher. Can we hear it for America's public school teachers? And just so you know, I used to practice early. I lined my dollies up, and I used to teach school. I had a reputation for being tough but fair. But by the time I graduated from high school, my family didn't have the money for an application to college, much less to send me off to 4 years at university. So like a lot of Americans, I don't have a straight line story. I have a story that's got a lot of twists and turns in it. So here's how my story goes. I was a high school debater, and I got a scholarship to college. Woohoo! Yeah! Go debate nerds. I love it. And then at 19, I fell in love, got married, and dropped out. Woohoo! Now, my choice, nobody pushed me into this, and going to be a good life. But I thought I'd given up the dream. I thought, that's it. I will never have a chance to teach school. And we're living outside Houston, and that was when I found it. A commuter college about 45 minutes away that cost $50 a semester. Yep. And for a price I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job, I was able to finish my 4-year diploma, and I became a special education teacher. I have lived my dream job. Yep. We have any public school teachers in here? Oh, yes, good. So I'm going to need you to back me up on this. So I got my first teaching job. I was teaching special education 4 to 6-year-olds. And that's where I need my teachers to. It is not a job, it is a calling. I probably would have at work. But by the end of my first year, I was visibly pregnant. And the principal did what principals did in those days. Wished me luck and hired someone else for the job. So, by this time, I'm in Jersey. I got a little baby. I can't get a job. And I'm just somebody who's got to do something. So I will go to law school. Found a state law school, state university, cost $450 a semester, and baby on my 3 years in law school, graduated from law school visibly pregnant. You will discover a pattern to these stories. And took the bar, passed the bar, and practiced law for 45 minutes. And then I went back to my first love, which is teaching. I traded little ones for big ones, and I have spent pretty much my whole grown-up life teaching in law school. Other big changes in my life at this point: husband number one, hint, never good when you have to number your husbands. Husband number one and I parted ways, but I found Bruce, and I've held on to him ever since. Find a good one, hang on to him. So, you bet. So here I am, I'm teaching in law school, and look, I don't know if it's because of how I grew up, but I taught money courses. Contract law, commercial law, secured transactions, payment systems, corporate finance, partnership finance, law of debtors and creditors, bankruptcy law, law and economics. If it was about money, I always wanted to understand it better and taught about it. But there was always one central question I worked on, and that's what's happening to working families in America. Why is America's middle class being hollowed out? Why is it that people who worked every bit as hard as my mom and dad worked 2 generations ago find the path today so much rockier and so much steeper? And for people of color, even rockier and even steeper. And the reason is about government. It's about whose side government is on, who our government in Washington actually works for. Think of it this way. We have a government in Washington that works great for giant drug companies, just not for people trying to get a prescription filled. It works great for people who want to make some money, investing in private prisons and private detention centers down at our border, just not for the people whose lives are torn apart by those places. It works great for giant oil companies that want to drill everywhere, just not for the rest of us who see climate change bearing down upon us. And when you see a government that works great for those with money and not so great for everyone else, that is corruption, pure and simple, and we need to call it out for what it is. Corruption. It's about the influence of money in Washington. It's campaign contributions, you bet it is, but it is more. It's about the lobbyists and the lawyers. It's about the PR firms. It's about the bought and paid for experts. It's about the tilted think tanks. It's about all the ways to use money, if you've already got it, to be able to influence what happens in Washington, to tilt the decisions in your favor, a little at a time, year after year after year. So think of it this way. Whatever issue brought you here today, whether it's about the price of prescription drugs, or whether it's about climate, or whether it's about student loan debt, whatever issue brought you here today, if there is a decision to be made in Washington, I guarantee it has been influenced by money. It has been shaped by money. It has been a little exception here for money, 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 money. And the thing is, if we want to make real change in this country, if we want to fix this problem, if we want a government that doesn't just work for those at the top, but works for everyone else, it's not enough to nibble around the edges. It's going to take big structural change. And that's why I'm in this fight. I am in this fight because I see an America that works better and better and better for those at the top, and that I see the opportunity in 2020 is the time to make this government work for the rest of us. So that's why I'm in it. Let's take some questions. Maybe I will get a chance to talk about some of those plans for how to do that. So we have questions. People have already got our numbers have been drawn. Hi, how are you? Hi.
Gary Thompson.
Hi, Gary Thompson.
I have a question, Liz,
Sure.
on how will you unite the Democratic Party and then in turn inspire the General Electric to overcome the cheating, the lies, and the dirty tactics that you will encounter as the presidential nominee? How will you unite us and bring us back to FDR, JFK, RFK, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama, the excitement that we need?
So that's a great question. I appreciate the question. Let me do my best on this to tell you how I see this. I think as long as we keep playing the old left-right, you know, you say your talking points, the other side says their talking points, we just don't go anywhere. And I think it's the wrong way to understand what's broken right now in Washington. For me, how I see this is just how I described it here. What's broken is that we've got a government that works for those at the top. We've got a government that works for those who've got the money to hire the lobbyists and the lawyers and the PR firms, and they just increasingly keep leaving everyone behind. Just look, since the 1980s, let's just pick 1980. 1980 forward, we have been in America where pretty much year after year after year, GDP goes up, stock market goes up, corporate profits go up. We had the drop in 2008, but it's recovered. Up, up, up. That means year by year by year, we have generated in this nation a lot of new income growth. So how much of that new income growth went to the 90% of America, right? Think of it that way. The upper middle class, the working poor, and the poor poor. How much of all of that income growth from 1980 to 2016, 2017, wherever our numbers are, how much of it? And the answer is zero. It's actually 0.4%, which rounds to zero. Think about that. All of the new income growth in this country is going to those at the top. Now, it's not just enough to diagnose the problem. You've got to talk about what we do to fix it. But think about what that also means politically. It's a way for us to say, guys, let's stop the fights with each other and get focused on this one. Because this is the one that is hollowing out the real strength of America. This is the one that is shrinking up opportunity. Trickle-down economics in America has been a monumental failure, and it is time to say so. Can we just, yes. Trickle-down economics is in America, where the consequence has been keep doing tax breaks for those at the top, and deregulating. Think about what that means. Help the rich and the powerful get richer and more powerful. Richer because they pay less in taxes, and more powerful because there's less regulation. And they claim it's going to trickle down on everyone else, and it just doesn't. What it means is there's no money there for the kind of school I went to. Where is that $50 a semester public university, a good university, that let me finish a 4-year diploma on a price I could pay for doing part-time waitressing? It's not there. We're watching opportunities shrink up in this country. So here's how I see this. As a Democratic Party and as a nation in the general election, the way we argue this, the way we pull ourselves back together, is we say, understand what is broken. It is a government that has given in, that has been captured by the rich and the powerful, and we got a chance to fight back. And when we fight back, what we can do is astonishing. And I hope we get a chance to talk about this, but I'm going to say the very short version of it. We can provide universal child care for every one of our babies in this country. We can do this. We can cancel student loan debt for 43 million Americans. Yeah. We can pass a Green New Deal to save our planet. Yes. To save people. We have that's on the side of the instead of the big. Our chance to come together, it's our chance to be inspired, and it's our chance to build an America, not the old America, not to go backwards. It's our chance to build an America of our very best values. So thank you for the question. Thank you. It's a great question. Hi.
I'm Blake Miller.
Hi, Blake.
I was wondering, people get confused about the true cost of their health insurance, and the government gives a tax break for companies. I don't know what that is today. Like 2008, it was like $3,500. So the government's kind of propping up the insurance companies and for-profit companies, and I just wonder if you could explain a little bit more about to America, I guess, when you compare your deal to their deal.
So it's a good question. If I can, I'm just going to pull back a little bit and talk overall about healthcare and healthcare costs, just a little bit about where we are. And I think I'll get to this one. If I don't, you throw me an elbow here, okay? But here's a short version of it. There are a lot of ways to see what's happening with healthcare in America, but the one I focus on a lot is that 36 million Americans went to the doctor last year, had something wrong, and the doctor wrote them a prescription, and then they couldn't afford to have it filled. And couldn't afford to have it filled because it meant the prescription or the groceries. I mean, this is it. That's how sick they were, but couldn't afford to have it filled, and that includes people with health insurance all across this nation. There are lots of other ways you could measure it, but for me, that's the heart of it. So here's how I see this. We need to know where we need to end up. And where we need to end up is in a place where every person in this country has the health care they need. Health care is a basic human right, and we fight for basic human rights. That's why we're here. The health insurance companies last year made, one year, $17 billion in profits. That's money they made, and I want you to think about this. It's money they made. Think how they make that money. They take in as much as they can in premiums, and then they raise the deductibles and the co-pays and the things that aren't covered, and then say when you need to have a prescription filled or see a doctor or a specialist, no. $17 billion, every dollar of which was earned by saying no to somebody whose doctor said, or whose nurse practitioner said, or whose mental health professional said, this is help you need. And the insurance companies made their profit by saying no. That's not sustainable for us as a nation. We cannot continue to do this. And you make the right point. We're actually subsidizing that for for-profit companies. So what can we do? Here's how I think about this. It's the maximum amount of help to the maximum amount of number of people as quickly as possible. So I think about what can you do? What can a president do on health care all by herself before you get Congress to move it all? And there are two things that I promise I will do on the first day. The first is I will defend the Affordable Care Act. It is an improvement, and I'm going to be out there. The Trump administration's trying to take the legs out from underneath it. That's wrong. I will fight to defend the Affordable Care Act. Second thing is I'm going to reduce the cost of commonly used prescription drugs. The power is already in the hands of the president. The laws were passed years ago. We just haven't had a president to stand up and do it. So, anybody in here, you know someone who's using EpiPens, right? I'm going to reduce the cost of insulin, reduce the cost of EpiPens, reduce the cost of HIV/AIDS drugs. We can take hundreds of millions of dollars out of this system, saving families, and we can do it from the beginning. Second part I want to do is I figured out how we can pay for health care without increasing taxes for middle-class families. One time, this is going to be a real shocker. The idea is we ask top 1% a little more. We ask those giant corporations like Chevron and Amazon that paid zero in taxes to pay something. That seems thing. Yeah. I personally is we actually enforce some of the tax laws for those at the top. In other words, crack down on the tax. That's enough money to offer health care to all of our folks. Let folks live with it. We can offer to 135 million people at no cost. Let people live with it. We can offer it to others at a modest cost. Let people live with health care decisions that are about themselves and their doctor or their mental health professional, their nurse practitioner, their physical therapist, with no insurance company in between. And then we build up a lot of allies, we make this happen, and we vote, and I believe we're going to get to Medicare for all. That's what I'm going to fight for. So there it is. I hope that's helpful. Good. Thank you. More?
Yes.
Yes.
We have time to draw two more.
Okay.
If that's all
but
right.
we still have some more coming up.
Yes, we have
right?
it'll be after your
Okay,
question,
good.
of course. Yes. All right. So same procedure. I'll read the numbers. If you're the lucky winner, yell persist and walk over to Kobe, okay? All right. Drum roll. Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. 0132.
132. We got it?
Hey,
all right.
amazing.
Come on over.
Come on up. Perfect. Okay. One more. Ready? 0117.
Persist. Fabulous.
Amazing.
Come on up.
Brandy, come on up.
All right.
Okay.
Let's do these. This is fabulous. Hi. Hi. Tell me your name.
Hi, my name's Alex.
Hi. Alex?
Yeah, Alice. Sorry.
Oh, Alice. Sorry.
Yeah.
That was my aunt's name. It's nice to see you, Alice.
Nice to see you. Thank you for taking my question,
You
Senator. In 2016, Politico published a report entitled "Biden Wanted Warren as His VP because he needed a partner to capture the wave of anti-bank and anti-establishment anger raging from the left." My question is, what would you say to your progressive supporters who fear that maybe you would be persuaded to join a more centrist Biden ticket as a fallback, you know?
So, I didn't read the particular article that you've read the headline from, but let me say this. I have been fighting the banks at least, no, longer than that, 25, I'm going back at least since the early 90s. 95 was when we started the bankruptcy wars, when the big banks, mostly credit card companies, figured out they could boost their profits. This is such a stunner. They could boost their profits by squeezing the families who file for bankruptcy. And bankruptcy was a big part of my research, why families go broke. The principal reasons, as our research showed, is that people were getting crushed by medical debts. They were getting crushed because it was a job loss and they borrowed money to try to keep themselves afloat and just couldn't get back to work in time. Or there was a death or divorce in the family and it just lost the income, went into debt. And all of those tangled in with, frankly, they got cheated, a lot of them, on credit cards that looked like 2% interest rate and turned out to be 52% interest rate. So I got in those fights, and I've been in those fights ever since. For me, it's always been about trying to find the most effective way to fight back against giant financial institutions that just the ones that want to try to boost their profits by squeezing people harder, by tricking them, by trapping them, by fooling them. And I've stayed on them. I do this every day in the United States Senate. I try to hold all corporate executives accountable. But since I sit on the banking committee, one of the groups I get to have pay special attention to are the banks. I torched the CEO of Wells Fargo so badly the guy had to resign. And that was okay with me. I thought it was the right thing to do. So all I can say is look at my history. If I have, if I'm a secret friend of these guys, someone needs to tell them. Because we've been in this, and do understand this, because I actually think this is an important part of it. I do not want to close down the banks. I don't want to close down finance. I understand how finance works. Finance is an important part of keeping our economy going. I just want a level playing field. I just want a playing field where people don't get cheated. I just want a playing field where the big banks have not figured out, if we can trick you in this particular way, then we can boost our profits up. So for me, I used to make this argument over and over, and I'll make it again. If you're a bank that basically follows the rules, if you're a bank that's not trying to make your profits by scamming people, by making them think they bought a credit card that has this interest rate and it really has this interest rate, or has a bunch of hidden fees, or has an accelerator in it, if you're somebody who's willing to play straight up, you should love me, right? Because if everybody follows the rules, then you're at no comparative disadvantage. The world you should hate is the world where people get to cheat. Because if you're not a cheater, it's not only that your customers get drawn off to those people, your whole business model is in trouble because you're competing against cheaters. What I want markets that are level playing fields, that people can walk in, they can know what it is they're getting, and then they make their own decision. And look, some people make good decisions, some people, I get it, sometimes may not make good decisions, but that's for them to do. The job of the government, the job of the regulator, should be to make sure that it is a level playing field, and that's what I fight for every day, and I've been doing it for a long, long time, and I'm going to keep right on doing it. So how's that? Good. Okay. You bet. Hi. Come on over.
Hi, my name
Hi.
is Caroline. I'm
Hi,
actually
Caroline.
from Massachusetts, so thank you for
Woohoo!
being a great senator.
Thank you.
But I'm here today actually with a class of 15 international students from 11 different countries. We're from NYU Abu Dhabi, and we were really excited to hear you speak today.
Good.
My question today isn't about a specific policy or a specific plan, because I know you have a great hold on all of those. I was curious how you're going to take the role, the transition from the legislative branch to the executive branch. How and when are you going to have the discretion to use executive powers and versus tactics to get things passed in Congress?
Okay, so that is a really good question. Let me remind you. I think I'm the only one who's running for president who's actually been on the executive side. Remember, after the consumer agency was passed into law, President Obama asked me to come and set it up. So I set up a federal agency. We went effectively from, I think, 2 employees the day I walked in the door to about 1,000, and spent a year and got the agency up and operational. So that it had a consumer complaint hotline, so that it had a supervision that was up and working. And, by the way, I'll just do a little part about this. We had 2 supervising inspectors general, just because of the complications of how this thing was set up. It was set up in Treasury, but then moved over to the Fed. And they came through and looked at everything we did when we got to the end and gave us A ratings for the work we did in setting it up. So I see this as, I actually have a unique perspective on this, having worked in both sides. I've been in the legislative side for a full term in the Senate and now part of an extra year, and been a part of that. But I've also seen what you can do with agency power. Can I give you just a couple of examples on this? And it's not all from consumer agency. It's what I see with the agencies and how it's influenced my work. Here's one of the first things I'll do as President of the United States. I will appoint a Secretary of Education who has actually been a public school teacher. I will appoint somebody who actually believes in public education. How's that? But now here's the part I want you to hear. That matters not just symbolically, it matters very practically. Someone who is on the side of keeping those dollars, those public dollars in public schools. Secretary of Education has a lot to do with writing the rules about this. Right now, Betsy DeVos is all about getting those dollars out and into the hands on the private side, into the hands of for-profits. I don't believe that public dollars should go there. Public dollars should stay in public education. So there's a difference you can make. Here's another one, and I just put out a plan for this one a couple of days ago. Turns out, in the Department of Education, again, the laws that are already there, the Secretary of Education has a lot of discretion to forgive student loan debt. So when people get cheated by these for-profit colleges, these for-profit outfits, and it turns out that, stuff comes out that they were lied to, sometimes these places shut down, the Secretary of the Education has the power to pick it up and say, student loan debt is canceled for people who got cheated. The Secretary of Education has the power to say, if you're one of these fly-by-night for-profit institutions, you can't get access to federal loan money, which means you can't ensnare these young people who are doing their best, who are trying to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and who get caught by these guys who just see them as another way to make money. These colleges, so-called colleges, that spend more money on advertising than they do on instruction. Think about that. And ultimately are getting two things. They're getting your tax dollars through federal loan money, and they are destroying the lives of young people who got caught up by them and end up with student loan debt that they can never cancel. It is an example of understanding how these agencies work. And I'll tell you what I want to do as president. I want to have people at the head of every one of these agencies who understands and believes in the mission and has the courage to stand up on behalf of the people. And that's true in education, at the Environmental Protection Agency, Bureau of Indian Affairs, all of them. That's what I'm going to do. Thank you. Good. It's a good question. Last question. Okay. And then to selfies. Okay. Hi.
Hi, I'm Brandy Connor, and
Did you say Randy?
Brandy.
Brandy.
Yeah. I own a business just down the street here,
Great.
so I'm a small business owner.
What kind of a business?
Ice cream and sandwich shop.
Whoa.
So in the middle of a blizzard, not selling much. But I'm only seasonal.
Uh-huh.
My biggest issue is, as a small business owner, I'm paying taxes like crazy. And then we have Amazon, these huge, huge corporates that get all these special tax breaks, not paying taxes at all. And I was just wanting to know your thoughts on that. And do you think that if we had term limits in Washington, if a lot of those payout politicians that are sitting there taking money from these big corporations would help?
So that is a great question, Brandy. Let me start on the back end of this question. So I mentioned earlier that the way I see this, if you have to just kind of boil it down to one problem, it's a problem of corruption that we've got in Washington. And it affects every issue that comes up. People talk about climate change. Climate change is the most important thing. I'll tell you this. As long as the oil lobbyists are calling the shots and the big polluters, we're not going to get there. You can't get there. If gun violence is your issue, as long as the gun industry is the one deciding, we can't do a single thing, not even things that 90% of Americans agree on some reasonable background checks, or getting weapons of war off our streets. Can't do those because the gun industry is calling the shots. That's the problem we've got all the way through this system. Why are prescription drugs so expensive? Because the drug industry calls the shots in Washington. So for me, what I have spent a lot of time, and this is the other half of the question, the legislative half, is how do we reduce the influence of money in Washington? Reduce the influence of the lobbyists. How do we bang back against that? And you wouldn't be surprised. Let me describe it this way. Here's the good news. I have the biggest anti-corruption plan since Watergate. That's the good news. Here is the bad news. We need the biggest anti-corruption plan since Watergate. And when you do one, you can't just do one thing or three things, because money money washes all the way through. So this is a big plan. It's a complex plan. Let me just describe a couple of the pieces. End lobbying as we know it. It's time. Yes. Block the revolving door between Wall Street and Washington. There's one, right? Stay after make the United States Supreme Court follow basic rules of ethics on conflicts of interest. Make everyone who wants to run for federal office put their tax returns online. So there's a lot of ways it's going to take to disrupt it. But here's how I see the part you asked about. What I worry about is not only how senators got there or Congress people or heads of agencies. What I worry about is in their job, they're peeking over the edge at their next job. And I don't want a system that has everybody peeking over the edge, even more so, at their next job in the private industry. Because, boy, that makes you really nice to the defense contractors, right? Really nice to the for-profit colleges. Really nice to the people who have lots of money and will be hiring you in your next life. And you think this doesn't matter? Right now, anybody want to guess? Who is the Secretary of Defense? Answer. The 7-year head of lobbying for Raytheon, one of the biggest defense contractors in America. I'm on Senate Armed Services. When he came up for confirmation, the question I asked is, I said, will you at least promise that for some number of years you will agree not to leave the job as Secretary of Defense and go straight back to lobbying for Raytheon or one of the other big defense contractors? You know what his answer was? No. And he still got confirmed by all of the Republicans and a big hunk of the Democrats. That's, to me, right in the heart of the problem. And so here's part of my proposal, and that is senators, folks in Congress, you want to be one of the main cabinet officials, lifetime ban on lobbying. Because I want to get these guys back working on our side. Now, back to your question just a little bit, because it's a perfect one that fits in with where we started this. It is hard to run a small business. It's hard. There are a whole lot of things you got to be good at. But it is 100 times harder when you've got a federal government that's on the side of the Amazons and the Chevrons and the Eli Lillys and not on your side. And boy, does that show up when it comes to taxes. The 3 companies I just mentioned made billions and billions and billions in profits last year. And understand this, they announce it publicly. Said, here's how much we made in profits. You know, revenues minus costs, that's what we made in profits. And here's how much we proudly paid in taxes. 0. Anybody in this room who paid even $1 in taxes, you paid more than Amazon did last year, more than Chevron did, more than Eli Lilly did, more than Halliburton did. But you paid taxes, right? Yeah, I know. Yes, that's right. You paid taxes. So to me, this goes back to the question of how do we unite? How do we unite our own party? How do we unite as Democrats and get something we can agree on and run on? And how do we unite by getting independents? How do we unite by getting some Republicans on our side on this? I was talking about my 3 brothers. 1 is a Democrat, 2 are Republicans. But on this kind of issue, we're all 4 in the same place. We don't want to see an America that's just not fair. An America where a little business has to spend much more in taxes than a big business, where your family has to spend more in taxes. Somebody's got to keep these roads paved. Somebody's got to keep these schools open. Somebody's got to keep us defended around the world, and yet pushing more and more and more of this onto small businesses and hardworking families. We're just reaching a breaking point around this. But here's the part that gives me hope. People know this. I don't care what your political affiliation is. I talk about this stuff about who government's working for in the heads on, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. People know this. So I see 2020 as our chance to shake up the table, where it's not the same old, you'll argue your argument that you've been arguing for 50 years, and the other side will argue their argument that they've been arguing for 50 years, but that we really will say it's different from this. This is about taking this government back so that we could actually make it work, not just for a handful at the top. This is about getting on our front foot, fighting back against the influence of money and making this government work for all of us. So I hope to do that. And the ice cream sounds good, even on a snowy day. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the question. Thank you all. I'm so grateful to you all for being here. We'll close this up. We'll do some pictures, but I want to tell you one more story before we go, and that is a story about toasters. You did not see that coming, right? So here's how this story goes. When I was a young mom, toasters could actually burn down houses. And the way it worked is, you know those little toaster ovens? They didn't used to have automatic shutoff switches. So that meant you could put 4 slices of bread in it, slide the tray in, flick the thing on, hear the baby cry, run down to the other end of the house, spend a little longer down there than you thought you had. And when you got back, the flames would be leaping off the toast 6 to 8 inches. Catch the curtains on fire, and then the kitchen cabinets on fire. This goes. Ask me how. All I will confess to is one year, my daddy was so upset about this. For Christmas, when I was a young mom, he bought me a fire. The Safety Commission said enough. We're done. You cannot sell